plus one is a different result.
No clear leader.
Exactly. This is a very close contest. What's behind some of this? Let's look at Latino voters. These are the two battleground states with the greatest concentration of Latino voters. In Arizona, you see that Kamala Harris is winning in our poll Latino voters by 18 percentage points, 56% to 38%. But look at Nevada. Totally different story of Latino voters in the Silver State. They're basically tied 48-47 among Latino voters. And I want you to just compare it. Now, listen, I'm always a little dubious of this. We're talking about a poll here, and we're talking about actual exit polls here. These are two different things.
This is a sample of people who say they're going to vote. That is people who actually voted.
Correct. And so Harris, as I said, had an 18-point advantage with Latinos. Biden in the 2020 exit polls, he had a 24-point advantage over Trump 4 years ago among Latinos in Arizona. Harris is +1 with Latinos in Nevada in our poll, but according to the 2020 exit polls, Biden won them by 26 percentage points. If that actually is what emerges on Election Day, that's a big warning sign in Nevada for the Harris campaign. And I will just note here, we are seeing the gender gap again. It's more extreme to both ends in Arizona. Harris winning women by 16 points, Trump men by 14 points in Arizona. Women are going for Harris by 5 points in Nevada, Trump getting men by 7 points. You see a sort of equal distance from the middle, but much greater on both ends in Arizona.
Oh, all right. So looking at our map, I want to start with the Sun Belt in the West, Nevada and Arizona. Now, if you remember, these were two states that Biden was able to win back in 2020. The problem is when you look at numbers like that and Kamala Harris and basically the Democrats on a whole are breaking down support when it comes to Latinos, and these being Arizona, one, a border state, and Nevada very close to being a border state with a large Latino population, you see that Kamala Harris is losing a tremendous amount of support. Her numbers are, perishing with Latino support there, down about 20 points in Nevada. It gets really hard when you have a state that is as close as it is, 1 or 2 percentage points, same thing with Arizona, to think that a shift like that with a major demographic is going to be able to hold you onto the vote. Now, you do have the abortion referendum. You will see increased turnout among women in Arizona and in Nevada, and probably in all of these states, you will see a little bit of a outside of the mean reaction from women voters. I just think that given the demographics there, given the fact that it's as close as it still is, that those are states that if you are the Kamala Harris campaign, you're not going to want to count on, I think, at this point. Unfortunately, I think Arizona is good and gone. Nevada is going to be a little bit closer. It's been much friendlier to Democrats, but I think this, given the environment where the border is one of the top two issues there, immigration, the border, that those are the issues on the mind of the voters there. That's what's being played in the political ads, and I think it's going to be difficult to overcome that if you are Kamala Harris. So my prediction is going to go ahead and lean Arizona Republican, going to Trump, Nevada also going to Donald Trump. Next, with regards to Georgia, we have seen a massive breakdown in the African-American support for Kamala Harris. It is really actually devastating at this point. If you look at the polling numbers, she's losing like 15 to 20 percentage points with African-Americans. They're either not showing up in Georgia or they're going to switch sides and vote for Trump, potentially more of a conservative African-American constituency there that was very enthusiastic to give Joe Biden a chance. Not so much so moving forward, and Trump has been able to message and reach out to that particular demographic. In terms of the non-educated white individuals and college-educated white individuals, you're not seeing as much of a breakdown either. The demographics are not looking good, or I should say the polling and the demographics not looking good in Georgia. My understanding, my feeling is that Georgia is most likely going to go to Donald Trump this time around, save for a massive polling error and a surge in, or a massive miss with regards to how they're polling those demographics. It looks sort of impossible, sort of in a similar way. You break down in one of those key core Democratic demographics, it makes it really difficult to hold on to that state. So now we sort of get to the key, right? We don't have anybody getting over the edge yet. We've given all the states that Kamala is sure to get and all the states that Trump is going to get, plus the leaners and the swing states. Um, there has been a lot of noise made about Wisconsin and Michigan. So there you have here you have your issues here with Arizona and Nevada. Like I said, the border is going to be a key issue there. Voters there are going to want to have something done about that. Even though Donald Trump was the one that killed the border bill, he still, for some reason, gets the benefit of running on that as he intended. Um, in Wisconsin and in Michigan, the data we have seen is that Kamala Harris is pulling away in the polling there on average. Now, remember, this is an environment where Donald Trump supporters or Republicans are getting oversampled, and Kamala Harris is still faring very well in these states. Michigan, a classic Democratic stronghold. Wisconsin, not so much so. You've seen some massive swings on election day. Trump does have a strong constituency there. However, his main constituency, as we've seen, in non-college educated white folk and college educated white individuals is collapsing. He's lost about 3 to 4% in both of those categories. And those are categories of individuals that make up a large portion of the electorate, especially in those states, massive, massive proportions. So if you are losing your core demographic in those states, if you're Donald Trump, that is absolutely devastating. It does a lot more damage than losing, for example, Arabic voters. Now, again, this isn't a video to talk about any specific issue. This is just pure election analysis. But the Arab population, while it is quite large in Michigan, it pales in comparison to the white people living in in that state. And it's just not going to be enough. So Trump is overperforming with a lot of the smaller demographics, and we will get back into that. Arab voters, African American voters, Hispanic voters, Asian American. But again, those voters are making up smaller proportions of the population, and it's not going to be enough in Michigan. In Wisconsin, it's not a similar issue there. I also have the Tim Walz effect. So you have the Wisconsin and Minnesota sharing a border is potentially they're playing a lot of messaging with Tim Walz there. He can relate to that area of the country culturally. They understand each other a little bit more. Maybe he speaks to them. And also, let's not underestimate the fact that the Joe Biden administration has been very, very keen on bringing back manufacturing. Trump said he was going to do it. He didn't do it. Biden passed the infrastructure bill. Biden passed the CHIPS Act, which are, basically just investments in the United States infrastructure, improving infrastructure, improving broadband, bringing back in manufacturing jobs, high paying, good paying jobs into these areas. There's a little bit of a lag there. We haven't seen that full effect yet. That'll take place over the next decade or so. But there's a reason why those demographics are breaking down for Trump. Maybe they've voted for him a few times and they're just, they're done with him at this point. They've paid attention, they've seen what he does, they've seen that he doesn't do what he says he was going to do, or he doesn't stand for what he says he stands for, and they've had enough. So with those demographics breaking down, um, I used to say my previous predictions, I was saying that Wisconsin was going to go strongly, not strongly, but it was going to eventually go to Donald Trump. I have since changed my tune on that. I think, given the recent polling, given the recent trends in demographics, I think Wisconsin will remain with the Democratic Party. I think they will go ahead and win. It'll be close. Again, these states will be close. I think Michigan will go ahead and stay there as well. Now, still, here we have it, 251 to 252, and it comes down to two states, two very, very close states, Pennsylvania and North Carolina. And I have been sort of racking my brain for how to approach this, but I've done the breakdown in similar videos before. Um, and Pennsylvania, it's been the polling in Pennsylvania has been off significantly in the last 2 years, especially in the midterms. We saw a shift of about 5 percentage points in each of those races. Shapiro was polling on average by about 10 points in his governor's race. Fetterman was polling tied with Dr. Oz, and Fetterman was barely campaigning, and he had just had a stroke and all that. And he ends up winning by 5. Shapiro ends up winning by 15. So you had a 5 point shift in there. I think we are potentially going to see a similar demographic. I think Trump does end up surging, a certain kind of voter that will come out for him rather than coming out for Oz or a Mastriano, I think was the other one. But they were both Trump-like candidates. Those were both Trumpian style individuals. So, that effect I think can hold true. And Donald Trump is already claiming voter fraud in Pennsylvania. He's already making a big stink. They're already trying to sue in all kinds of different ways. So Pennsylvania looks too close for comfort for Trump. I think the internal polling is not looking particularly good either. And so for that reason, I actually believe that Pennsylvania is going to go for Kamala Harris. I think there is a polling error there. Trump is polling ahead on average by about half a percentage point or 1 percentage point, depending on where you look at it. But that is where Pennsylvania is going to fall. And if you look at it, that is the 270 that you need to win. So we haven't gotten to North Carolina yet. So the plot does thicken a little bit. But just with that alone, holding on to the blue wall, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, if you're Kamala Harris, you go ahead and win the election, and that wraps it up. But you can also think about a contingency plan. So the interesting thing about North Carolina um, is that when you look at African American, Black, Latino voters, you are seeing a massive shift in all those categories, similar sort of like a national trend you're seeing there. In Georgia, you are not seeing the shifts in white voters. Those voters are still staying very, very loyal with Trump. However, the polling with non-college educated white and white voters is shifting in North Carolina. Trump is losing those support. He's losing those in large margins. And again, that is still the largest population center in North Carolina, or the largest population block in North Carolina, if you will. So, and you might say, well, okay, well, that being said, North Carolina has been pretty consistently Republican. Joe Biden was polling better than the result on election day. North Carolina shifted towards Trump's direction by about 1 point or so. But again, that was the 2020 environment. That was pre-January 6th. That was pre-Roe versus Wade. And we haven't had a really good look at an election, at a large slate of these elections with a Trump on the ballot. And my instinct tells me that you are going to see a shift on election day of 1 to 3 percentage points again in North Carolina, but this time towards the Democratic candidate. In the governor's race, you're seeing a massive blowout happening. The voters there are not particularly keen on Trump-like candidates. They're Mark Robinson is the candidate there. That's the Republican Trump-like candidate. He is as extreme gets with regards to Trumpiness. He like outdoes Trumpiness, but without all the charisma. So so for that reason, North Carolina is absolutely on the map, and I think if you're Kamala Harris, you have a good chance of picking that off too, and basically running this sort of corner of the country strategy up through Maine, stretching out to Minnesota, and then down through Virginia and North Carolina seems to be where the story of this election is taking place. Massive surges in women voting, shifting demographics that are going to shape how this is going to turn out. One last note on North Carolina. There's this pollster called Atlas Intel that claims to be, oh, we were the most accurate in 2020, and so everyone should listen to us. Problem is, the only reason they were accurate in 2020 is because they were one of the pollsters that was most oversampling Republicans. Turned out they were right in that particular instance. They're hoping for a similar thing to happen. It kind of reminds me of like the Michael Burry. He was the one that predicted the Big Short back in like 2006 or 2007. He shorted all the banks and all the real estate and everything, and he made $1 billion off of it. The problem is he has been trying to do the same thing ever since, and he has been wrong time after time after time. He keeps shorting everything, and things keep going up. So he was right that one time massively, and he's been wrong ever since. This is the exact same situation happening. Atlas Intel happened to have the right strategies for that one election. They're not going to be right again. And in fact, even if they are off by just this 1 point, this is the poll from Atlas Intel out of North Carolina. They just had another one. I think it was +4 for Trump. I'm not confirmed on that as well. I think they have more polls coming out. They're just sort of gish galloping a bunch of polls at the end here to pretty much cover all the bases. They'll say, oh, no, but a few days before we had +1, and then there was a Harris +1, and there was a Trump +4. I just think that they've been oversampling Republicans anyway. And so that actually a poll that was +1 for Trump, believe it or not, that's actually a positive poll for Kamala Harris when you look at the methodology that they used to do that. Final points here. Kamala's map looks less African American vote overall, less Hispanic vote, less Asian American vote, but massive increases in overall women turnout. Young voters are going to show up, and non-college educated white voters that are shifting away from Trump, even if it's 2 to 3 percentage points. They make up massive swaths of the population, and that is what is going to do it. Another final point here. Guys, Trump is a bad businessman, and there's a reason he's a bad businessman, okay? If you've ever played Monopoly before, the people that win in Monopoly are the ones that pick off or that go ahead and buy the largest properties, right? You want to buy Boardwalk, you want to buy Park Place, okay? You buy Boardwalk, you buy Park Place, one person lands on it. If you have a house or a hotel on it, boom, they're bankrupt, and you basically win the game in a few turns, right? If you are playing Monopoly, you want to get the big properties, you want to get the major properties. People that are bad at Monopoly are the ones that buy the first properties that they land on, right? They buy, I forget what they're called, but you buy up a bunch of small properties and people eventually land on them, but it doesn't do any damage. You pick off a little bit, but they're able to recover. You pick off a little bit and they're able to recover. The situation with this election is that Donald Trump is doing the bad Monopoly player strategy. His campaign is going for African American men and women, Hispanic, Asian, gays for Trump. You even heard JD Vance talking about it. Young white men potentially making up one of those larger groups. But all of these groups are minority groups that make up smaller percentage points of the population. Harris, whether this is the intention or not, is going after the largest groups on the map or the boardwalk and park place. I'm not making a racial equivalence or saying anything. I'm just saying about in terms of population size and significance. Non-college educated white people, college educated white people, and women overall, women making up 53 to 54% of the population are going to overwhelm the polls, are going to overwhelm the voting. Non-college educated white people making up anywhere from like 30 to 40% of the population, depending on state, somewhere up, sometimes upwards of 60%, 70%, not 70%, but anyway, you get the point. Um, and then the only sort of small category is that never Trump Republicans that sort of sits in the middle, 5 to 10%, but that's one of the smaller categories. Guys, at the end of the day, and like I said, the story of this election is that Donald Trump is being overestimated in the polls. They're living in this right-wing ecosystem on the internet where, Elon Musk has bought Twitter and they're just feeding each other these feedback loops of right-wing propaganda and right-wing fart sniffing, excuse me, that basically makes them so overly confident that they think they're going to win. They're projecting that onto themselves and onto the world and giving off this aura of victory. Guys, Donald Trump is already excuse me. No, this is not what I wanted to show. They're already accusing the left of voter fraud. They're already coming out with all kinds of bogus lawsuits. And Cenk Uygur put it best: you are not confident in yourself in winning if you are going out and accusing the other side of cheating before the election's even happening, right? So their internal polling is not looking good. It's looking a little bit like what I'm talking about here. There are cracks in the blue wall. There are cracks in North Carolina. They're doing well in certain demographics in certain states that they have the makeup, but it's not going to be enough to get them over the edge. And that's how I honestly feel. That's my honest assessment. I've been honest about it the whole time. Back when it was Trump versus Biden, I said Trump was going to win in a blowout of like 350 electoral votes to nothing. I'm honest with it, guys. I see what's happening. I try to just, measure the pulse of the country. Um, and that's really how I see it. And finally, I did a video about this yesterday. Voter enthusiasm, as measured by Gallup, is at an all-time high in the Democratic Party. Now, this doesn't guarantee you a win because Republicans were majorly outpacing Democrats in terms of enthusiasm in 2012. And of course, Obama went on to win. It was a bit of a closer election, but Obama did win handily in terms of the Electoral College. The only time Trump was able to crack through and break through that was when there was an absolute low in enthusiasm on both sides. He was able to take it to the, get the margins that he needed. Democratic enthusiasm is higher now than it was in 2020, and that was a massive enthusiasm election, highest voter turnout in the history. We might be heading towards highest voter turnout in history again, and driven by women and those demographics we talked of. Trump support not going to be enough. And you see that in like poly market and the betting markets are starting to turn around and come to that realization as well. So there you have it. It is Friday, November 1st, 2024. The election is in 4 days, in like 72 hours or something. And we will really find out. Oh, I should say, one last point. I know I've probably said one last point a few times, but we are going to see a similar effect on election day with regards to like a red shift. So just a note for election day. In Pennsylvania, early on, it's going to look like Trump is winning because you're going to get the early election day count happening first. You're not able to count mail-in ballots until election day. So those will trickle in later and into the night and into the following days. We are not going to know the result of Pennsylvania for several days. So that is a bit concerning. It's a bit frustrating. Same thing with Wisconsin. So you are not going to know the result in Wisconsin until several days or a few hours after, because same thing is happening. You are basically going to be waiting for those results. And this is the troubling part, guys, is that the map is actually going to look like this for a while. If, everything sort of turns out the way that I'm predicting, you're actually going to see Pennsylvania going to Trump for a while and Wisconsin going to Trump. And eventually, again, if my prediction holds true, that night or the following day, you're going to see these shift. What do you think is going to happen? They're going to say it was the same thing, dumped in the middle of the night. They're cheating. It's fraud. They're going to cause all kinds of stir and rioting and all those things. So I'm just saying it right now. I'm just predicting. Again, Pennsylvania is going to look like Trump is winning by a lot. It's going to look like Trump is winning by a lot in Wisconsin, potentially even Michigan as well. And all of those are going to shift on election day. So just want to put that note out there as way. I see it now. I'm just warning you. It's what's going to happen. Okay. So there you have it. Election 2024, your full breakdown so that you have a full understanding of the demographics, the shifts, and what's going into election day. Again, it's the United States of America, everybody. Anything can happen, but I've paid very close attention to this thing, and that's what I think is going to happen. So let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. Let me know your thoughts. Drop a comment, drop a like, and subscribe. We will end it there, and we will do some recap, of course, see where we were right and potentially wrong after everything is sort of settled. But have a happy election. Good luck. Stay safe, and see you in the next one.